Hello and welcome to the Nintendo Power Checklist for the year of 1995. Isn't the first picture just very appropriate? This is January of 1995, the bonus issue. Um, this is a checklist where we cover all the goodies that came with each volume of Nintendo Power Magazine. This is for the entire year of 1995 for you, which starts with, I believe it is volume, what does this say? 68, and it'll go to 79 here. So this was a wraparound cover, again, like they had done the previous year for the bonus issue in 94. It just says plain 95 on it. The back cover, too, which I didn't take a picture of this, it said Play It Loud. That was during the Play It Loud era of Nintendo. But on the front cover, it was actually glow in the dark. Now, if you try to take a picture of this in the dark, like I was trying to do here, it's not going to show up very well. And this is the best that I could get the picture. First, you have to shine a light towards it, then turn out the lights or get it really dark, which couldn't. I'm doing this in the middle of the day, and the sun is shining through all my windows and stuff, so I had to get to a closet. And I had to turn the flash on, then turn the flash off and take this picture. That's how I got it to activate. It's almost kind of like I wouldn't say a black light, but it's kind of light activated in order for the glow in the dark to work. And the back cover also does the same thing. It's Play It Loud. Now, I almost forgot that it was glow in the dark. Except for on this red part of this cover of the wraparound on the inside, it tells you, oh, blah blah blah. This is something about, you want to do this with the lights off or something like that. Now, to the naked eye, it's more seeable than viewable than it is trying to take a picture of it. So, but then this is the actual newsstand cover, which is the Adventures of Batman and Robin. So there you go. The centerfold poster is Mega Man X2, which it's kind of, is that cubed or squared? I think it's cubed. I can't remember. But then there was also the bonus issue, which had all of this stuff in it, which was preview for 95, best of 94, Power Fest finals, which was kind of like a tournament that was going on, and how to play it loud. That was the commercials and the advertisements that they were doing in comic books and of course Nintendo Power and in magazines at the time, was the Play It Loud motif. On the back of that centerfold is the Adventures of Batman and Robin. So this was, I think, near towards the end of the Batman animated series, and they started to do stuff where they just called it Batman and Robin, and they made games based off of it, and blah blah blah. So that's a little walkthrough or stages or whatever. So this was an iron-on, which I never took out. And iron-ons don't really work very well, but it was for Donkey Kong Country, and it says Nintendo Power on it too. So that was kind of cool, and they put it in the center with the classified information, a little bit separate from the centerfold. So that was the bonus from the previous year. Man, there was so many bonuses, and then the year before that there was even more bonuses. But this year, not as many bonuses in the volumes. So this is volume 69, which is February 1995, as you can see here. And then on here it says, "Ooh, exclusive 16-page strategy guide." Is not a separate strategy guide for Super Punch-Out. Now I don't know why they said exclusive as in exclusive to Nintendo Power. Or if they meant to Power Club members. I don't think it was for the Power Club members. Super Power Club, whatever. It was just for Nintendo Power Magazine. The centerfold here is Donkey Kong Land. Yes, just like with Super Mario and a bunch of other stuff. They started not porting, but they started bringing games over to Game Boy. that were popular Super Nintendo games or NES games and stuff. So, and then this is the, like I said, the exclusive strategies. On the cover it says strategy guide, but it's not an actual guide. It's just a insert of, just like the regular magazine. There's just got a big article on it. On the back of that, there is Disney's The Lion King. Little walkthrough there. And next issue, volume 70, March 1995, which is NBA Jam Tournament Edition on the cover. And then they also talk about the Nintendo Power Awards and the CES. Now this is when they didn't even have E3 yet. They were still doing the Consumer Electronics Show for showing off video games. But Star Fox 2, which never came out, never officially came out until the Super Nintendo recent classic that had it built in. But anyways, that was something that was shown off there in the Virtual Boy. I think this was a weird time for Nintendo, because the Nintendo 64, there was a lot of question marks about it. At this time, it was called NU64, or Nintendo Ultra 64. Killer Instinct was already out in the arcades. Midway was working with Nintendo, with Cruisin' USA and some other games that used the Ultra 64 graphics chipset. Yada, yada, yada. It was taking too long to make the games. It was taking longer for the system to come out. So they were just trying to, like, let's see what we can do on the side here. And they did the Virtual Boy. Yeah, so enough about that. I'll probably talk about it again. But here's the centerfold for this issue of Nintendo Power Magazine. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Now, this is something newer that they started doing. They called it Epic Center, which is basically near towards the center, or basically right after the centerfold of the magazine. They had stuff about role-playing games. And a lot of these at this time were very Japanesey JRPGs. And we knew that Nintendo had a hard-on for Enix and Dragon Quest, or Dragon Warriors, what they call it when they try to market it over here and publish it themselves. And Final Fantasy was a big deal. This is around the time, also, you got to keep in mind that there was another generation coming up. And there was 3DO was out there. Sega had the Sega CD, the 32X, and then the looming, I think, maybe it was called Katana. I can't remember. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. Maybe that's Dreamcast. But what would later become the Saturn. And, of course, Sony was working on the PlayStation with Nintendo. Oh, no, they weren't. They were working separately on their own. And they had an inroads with Nintendo. And originally it was going to be an add-on for the Super Nintendo, a CD-ROM add-on. Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. We don't want to get into that here. But it was probably an odd time for Nintendo in 95, 96. And so Virtual Boy is one of those oddities that sticks out. And it begins the whole third console curse. Here I am. I'm going crazy with this on that tangent there. On the back of that centerfold, there is missions for... What is this? Oh, Meta Warriors. Meta Warriors is awesome, by the way. I didn't learn about it until much later, after it already had come out. And that was one of the few games that I spent an okay amount to buy later on for my Super Nintendo later on. I've since sold it, but it was that was a crazy thing. I just couldn't believe I had missed something that cool. But anyways, it was a Konami game and blah, blah, blah. Here's the Super Power Supplies catalog for spring 1995. I debated whether I was going to type it like that on my blogger for the actual text checklist, but I didn't. And the cover is messed up because I cut out the Superpower stamps, which, $1 a piece. I had $2 off from a catalog order. One of these days I'll make a video covering all of the Superpower Supplies catalogs and all the goodies that you could get and that I personally got. I got a lot of t-shirts, hats, all kinds of good stuff from from that catalog. So, but that'll be another video. And I should really make a separate video about what I was getting to before when I was talking back here about Epic Center and RPGs and Sony getting a headway with a lot of these Japanese companies, while, you know, secretly, while also working with Nintendo and blah blah blah. It's that we could talk for hours about that. Let's just say that. But you've got that came with the issue, or with that volume, and then the third edition, which is volumes 1 through 70, plus the player's guides. It says this is the third edition of the Nintendo Power Index. That was a pack-in for this volume. We're on to the next volume, Stargate. Isn't that weird that they made a video game on? Well, not really weird. It's sci-fi and it's cool, but it's just like, whoa, you know, inside the NU64 Dream Team. And Dream Team. Now, this brings up another point about the Japanese developers. Sony was getting an inroads in the arcades. They knew that arcades was kind of having a resurgence, come back after Street Fighter and all the fighting games. Neo Geo was getting big. The Capcom Play System was big. So Sony was making their own play system, and they're working with companies like Namco and Capcom and stuff like that. And a lot of these games ended up getting ported to PlayStation in its early beginnings. And also Saturn too, because Sega was working on arcade stuff. I mean, Nintendo was a spearhead there a little bit with Killer Instinct and the stuff that they were doing with Midway. And it's weird because Nintendo you see as a Japanese company, and Sony at the time was seen more as an American company, Discman, Walkman, stuff like that. Anyways, but Sony was really getting inroads with a lot of the Japanese developers, and the Dream Team here for Nintendo 64, or what would later become the Nintendo 64, the Dream Team, was a lot of actually Western, American, and European companies that were supporting the Nintendo 64. Why? Because the Japanese companies were siding with Sony at this time. Well, already starting to side with Sony, at least in the preliminary stages of what would become the PlayStation. So, Weapon Lord, speaking of Namco, a company that did not like Nintendo and was kind of more leaning towards Sony at this point, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. We could talk about Namco, a whole other video about that, but there's the Weapon Lord for you guys. That's kind of like a little bit of a history of before Soul Blazer or Blader in other countries, and Soul Calibur. We had Weapon Lord on Super Nintendo. So on the back of that is Stargate, some missions, walk through there. And then in the back of the issue, these cards were not as well, they were too well perforated, I should say. That I'm holding them down with my middle finger here. I'm not flipping you off. But these are for Mega Man X. Now I list them text-wise as a set because I mean, you could trade them. They're trading cards, but I call them a set of cards instead because this is the full set right here of the Mega Man X2, or X cubed, squared? I don't know. Cards. And I call it a card set because this is all of the cards that there were of them. It wasn't like there was some people in their volume of Nintendo Power Magazine got different cards than other people did. No, it wasn't like that. Only one volume had this. It was this volume, and they were all in there together. Blah, blah, blah. Next volume. We are on volume 72. May 1995, Kirby's Dreamland 2. This is a Game Boy game. Kirby was started as a Game Boy game, but it quickly became popular, and they spread it to NES, 64, Super NES. 64 isn't out at this point, but anyways, there was its origin. We're talking about Squaresoft again and Epic Center. At this time, Nintendo had a large stake in Square. Enix was its own separate company in Japan, and they were starting to work with other companies to publish their games here outside of Nintendo. So, you know, there was Super Mario RPG, was in the works, and that was with Silicon Graphics, SGI technology, kind of like Donkey Kong Country, and all that kind of stuff. There was some Square wanted something bigger. You could tell at this point. They wanted to make movies. They wanted to make FMV. They wanted to use CGI graphics. They wanted to. SGI was just a first step in that direction, and Nintendo was like a stepping stone before they got to Sony. That's all. Again, that's a whole other big discussion. But here's Square, Secret of Evermore. Maybe they were trying to cash in on because there was there's a lot of secret RPGs, JRPGs, but I never really got into it. So I love Secret of Mana, but that's a whole other story. On the back of that centerfold is some tips, some stages, walkthroughs for the Kirby Dreamland 2. Weapon Lord on the cover. I don't know if this was Nintendo of America trying to appease, in a way, Namco, because Namco, apparently, the president of Namco and the president of Nintendo were getting into it at this point in Nintendo's history. And Namco wanted the Nintendo 64 to be a CD-ROM based system. CD-ROMs were the newer future. Nintendo didn't see it that way. They wanted the faster loading times. They wanted cartridges. They wanted control over the cartridges. That's a whole stink with a lot of developers and a lot of publishers. They did not like that about Nintendo. I personally side with Nintendo pretty much with everything. And this situation was a little goofy because from what was rumored, from what was heard, Namco wanted nothing to do with Nintendo already going into this, but then even more so when, president to president, he's trying to convince Hiroshi Yamauchi to make it a CD-ROM based system. He's like, nope, no, we're going to do it. We're going to stick with cartridges. And that didn't sit well with a lot of companies, especially Namco. But there's Namco on the cover. And also Killer Instinct 16-bit, no lie. See, by this point, Killer Instinct was already out in arcades, and they was touting 64-bit. But, with the Donkey Kong video, if you stayed behind the credits and blah, 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 and stayed after, you could see that they were running Killer Instinct, or they were testing Killer Instinct on Super Nintendo. And it was a big deal. And, so Primal Rage, it was also a big deal. More fighting, more carnage type thing. Bloody, taking it to the next level. Here you see that it's Atari games, but it's actually Time Warner. Time Warner was working with Atari and Midway, and there's a history there too, and that's very Americanized video game companies. So there's the Epic Center again. On the back of the Primal Rage centerfold in this volume was the missions for, what is this? Star Trek The Next Generation. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek series, one of my favorite Star Trek series, because, it's its own thing, but yet it takes a lot of the good stuff from Next Generation, which is awesome, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other discussion. Again, cards at the end, and I'm not flipping you off again. This is my middle finger here, but I'm holding these down because these are perforated so well that they fold up in the middle and they fall out. I've kept mine in my magazines. These are not like the 9 set cards that they would have from was it 6? I can't remember if it was 9 or 6. Wow, I've already broken my brain there with the older trading cards from the previous years that were branded as, not one game and not one set, but like a big trading card thing where each volume had their, different ones, and they were color coded like the Nintendo Power, red, green, purple for NES, Super NES, and Game Boy. But we're heading into the Nintendo 64 days, and at this point they didn't have those cards anymore in the magazine. And they had these other sets of cards that would come in every once in a while. This is for Donkey Kong Country. And speaking of Donkey Kong Country, here's Donkey Kong Land. So, yeah, ACM, Advanced Computer Modeling on Game Boy. Whoa, when pigs fly. Nope, they're actually doing it. So, and then this was E3. Yeah, they talked about CES before, but this is E3 right here. I believe this is one of the first E3s ever. So, and we got Chrono Trigger here, which was kind of a Akira Toriyama, Square, and Enix working together with Nintendo. Chrono Trigger. It's hard to explain. Very Dragon Quest Warrior-esque, but also Final Fantasy-esque. Also, you know, the artwork of like Dragon Ball. So, I mean, it's crazy. Here's Boogerman as the centerfold for this volume. And Epic Center was becoming a big thing. JRPGs, RPGs in general was becoming a big thing. And Sony had an inroad on that with FMV, CD quality sound, larger games they could fit on a disc. Now, Sony wasn't out at this point, but I'm just giving you a little prelude as to you know, why these companies were starting to. This was becoming a bigger deal in America, and Nintendo Power saw it that way. I'm sure Nintendo of America saw it that way. Nintendo of Japan probably saw it that way too, but they knew that they were losing, that they were kind of like flipping off Japanese developers at this point, because a lot of them were wanting a home console that was going to have cheap disc-based games like the current systems that were coming, or the systems that were coming, and also be able to make easy ports from their arcade games over. And, you know, movies, it was beyond just FMV, beyond just Laserdisc stuff. It was like inserting movies into video games. And wow, that was, I never liked that aspect of video games. It's not that I don't care about story or whatever. It's just I think some stories, especially in RPGs, are kind of like contrived, and I just don't. And then, you know, I want to play a game. I don't want to watch a movie. But that's a whole other thing. So here is what is this? Nosferatu stages. So, meanwhile, Super Nintendo was getting a lot of good games, and it could have probably continued even longer if they wouldn't have messed with Virtual Boy and had this hard-on for 3D gaming with Ultra 64 and all that stuff. But it was the future, and that's where Nintendo was going. So, and Earthbound. This is Earthbound right here. Warning. Use only in a well-ventilated area. And I scratched mine, and they still worked. They're scratch and sniff advertisement. I don't know what they were thinking with this, with Earthbound. But, you know, Nintendo of America had some hand-holding when it came to putting in the strategy guide. And that was the only way to get the Earthbound strategy guide, Nintendo Power one, was to get the big box for Earthbound, which was basically Mother 2. There was a Mother that was on Famicom, never made it on the NES over here in America. The second Mother was on Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom, but they brought it over here to America. This smells like trash, and this actually does smell like kind of like pepperoni and cheese, even after you scratch it. It's kind of crazy. I kept mine inserted. It's crazy. Next volume. This is Virtual Boy. Oh man, come on. But they also have Yoshi's Island too. So Super Nintendo was it was clear that it was winning over the Genesis at this point. The Sega Genesis, but Nintendo again was focused on this 3D thing. I'm not trying to knock it too much, but it was Super Nintendo could have been lasted as long as the NES and been more successful if they would have just, you know, but they had to focus on the future. Sony was coming. At this point, they probably didn't see Sony as much of a threat. Neither did most of the rest of the industry, especially like Sega and stuff like that. But it was a threat, Killer Instinct. There's Idol right there, two-headed monster. This is, and it's coming to Super Nintendo. Whoa! You don't have to wait for the 64. The 64 one didn't even come out until a couple months after the 64 was out. So, and the 64 one was not like the arcade one. It was basically Killer Instinct 2. Killer Instinct Gold is what they call it. We'll get into that once that comes about. 2049. This is, or not 2049. Sorry, 2040 Phantom. 2040. This is a little walkthrough here. Wow. And Virtual Boy cards. Notice that there's not 8. They didn't even have enough games for them to make 8 cards. They have the Virtual Boy itself, Galactic Pinball, which does feature Samus's ship, so that's kind of cool from Metroid. Mario's Tennis. You got Mario Clash. You got Red Alarm, and Telro Boxer. So, also at the top here, you see this little envelope. These were 3D, and there was 3D glasses inside this envelope. And this is the back of the envelope, and it says, "Open here and make the pages of Nintendo Power enter a new dimension." So the cards and a couple of the previews for Virtual Boy had three-dimensional thing. It was really hard for them to advertise. They had kiosks everywhere. They were shoving them in Blockbuster videos to rent. They were doing all kinds of crazy stuff to try to, because you really can't see the appeal of the 3D aspect of Virtual Boy unless you're actually experiencing it. But they tried all these kind of gimmicks to get people interested. This is the Superpower Supplies catalog for summer of 1995. As you can see, there's a little blemish there. I had to cut out the stamps for that volume to, or for that catalog to get $2 off my order at the time. I want to get this replaced someday, but for now, there it is. This came around August of 1995, and that would be around volume 75. It just wasn't happening, though. It was all red. Virtual Boy, I love mine. But yeah, that was the chink in the armor for Nintendo, and starts the whole process of the third console curse with the Nintendo 64. But that's a whole other thing. I ordered this from Anchorage, Alaska. Somebody up there was selling it. They had gotten it. It's complicated. I write about it on my, it's the Killer Instinct on the cover. It's September 1995, volume 76 here, but it's a little complicated. So some lists online say that there was a Virtual Boy advertisement inside of it, but I think people are confused. I think maybe some of the issues later on came with the 3D glasses. And or they confused this one page in the back of the magazine, which we'll go to here soon. There's Batman Forever. That is not Michael Keaton. Super NES from Acclaim. Ooh, boy. And then on the back of that, there is Castlevania Dracula X stages. People should have talked more about Dracula X, but Castlevania, I don't know. I think some of these games were starting to trickle over, or versions of these games were starting to trickle over to other systems. So the series kind of like got a little diluted, Contra and Castlevania, Mega Man, stuff like that. But that's a whole other discussion too. But yeah, here's the back. This is the back page of Nintendo Power Magazine of that that volume, and it's not. I don't know why they pointed it out in the checklists, like as if it was some kind of insert or extra. It was not. It was just a part of the back page. And they were talking about how NBC was going to do something, Blockbuster was doing something, to remember the must-see 3D on NBC? I forgot what they had I mean, even Fox did it. I think they had a 3D episode of Married with Children. Then there was 3D episode of Third Rock from the Sun, which is later after this, I believe. There was 3D episodes of Friends, and that's what this was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be a crossover. Friends was becoming like a huge thing. Yeah, so NBC was in on this 3D thing, but they were supposed to advertise the Virtual Boy on Friends, but I don't think that ever happened. But yeah, here was the coupons that you got. That's why I had to order this separately, because I had the coupons, but I'd already used them. So I needed the coupons back because I'm a completist and everything. So this was before I worked at Blockbuster, before I graduated high school. Everybody was Blockbuster. Everybody was Friends, and Nintendo was really trying to market the Virtual Boy, and it's not doing a good job of that, just like they didn't do a good job with Earthbound, but and then here we go. We got Killer Instinct. This is a mini comic. As you can see, it does not fit in a manga bag, though. It was taller than that. And it says exclusive edition. It's a #1. I never got any of the other ones, but apparently Jago and B. Orchid were brother and sister. Wow. Anyways, so this was like a comic based on Killer Instinct. I put it in a manga bag just to keep it safe. I think I may have an extra copy of this too, because my original one came with this, and then again I bought it again in order to get those coupons back. And you can see the front cover on this is a little torn, so oh man. Anyways, next volume, which is October 1995, the Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island is on the cover. And then we're talking about Super Mario RPG, talking about JRPGs, we're talking about Epic Center Civilization. Wow, that one's a Western RPG, though. Whoa! Come on, guys. The centerfold for this is Waterworld. Virtual Boy. That's double fail. Now, I liked Waterworld, and I liked the Virtual Boy. But you gotta admit, that's kind of funny. Waterworld on Virtual Boy from Ocean. I like Ocean. I'm not going to pick on him. But I think this is... yeah, so... There we go. They did make a Waterworld on Super Nintendo too, so... I don't think that they wanted to kill it too much. They also made Nestor's Funky Bowling on Virtual Boy, but that's a whole other topic. I'm going off on too many tangents here, and this is already too long. But... we are on volume 77, October 1995, and on the back of the Waterworld centerfold, there is Mega Man, not X, not X cubed, not X squared. This is Mega Man 7 walkthrough. So there's my middle finger again. But cards on the back of the magazine. Again, I had to hold them down because they were too perforated and almost falling out of the magazine. I had to hold them down so you could see them flat. It is Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island card set. Again, not calling them trading cards because this was the set that everybody got. MK3, Mortal Kombat 3. Speaking of Midway and the Dream Team, as the cover of November 1995, volume 78. We're approaching 80 folks. 1995, coming to the end, near the end of the year. So, by this time, I think the Mortal Kombat thing was the Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 debacle that happened with the no blood and blah, 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 and then you have to put in the codes for the blood, and Sega did it, and Nintendo didn't, and yada, yada, yada. I think that controversy is still being talked about today, yet I think by the time 3 came out, I don't think it was... at the time that it had come out, I don't think it was that big of a deal, but some people still make a big deal out of it. Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. Now see, Donkey Kong Country was already popular, and they were making sequels to it already, and the Super Nintendo was still hitting a stride. But look at this, the looming future of NU64, Nintendo 64. And there it is. Polygonal graphics. Now this is characters from Final Fantasy VI. Now a lot of magazines or the website, internet was starting to become a thing at this point. Not such a big thing, but there was more probably crap and rumors on there than there was any kind of truth or real news. You know, you see enough pictures from Famitsu magazine, and people think, "Oh, I know things that other people don't." You know, but this was actually Final Fantasy VI characters, which is Final Fantasy III in America. And it's funny how Epic Center acknowledges that it's Final Fantasy. See how it says FF6 right there? But a lot of they also acknowledge that people were thinking that this was actually Final Fantasy VII. Oh, this is the step into the future. This is 3D. This is you know. Now, rumored Final Fantasy VII was gonna be on the 64, but that is such a clouded piece of history because of the whole Super NES add-on that didn't happen, and Secret of Mana was supposed to take advantage of that, and other RPGs and other Japanese games were like Street Fighter. There's probably the reason why there was no Street Fighter 3 for the longest time, and they kept milking a bunch of those, is because they were waiting for the CD-ROM add-on and or the next Nintendo system to come out to like really kind of push this. But everything fell towards Sony here because Nintendo was just stuck on this 3D kick, which, you know, Sony had 3D too. So much so that it kind of screwed the pooch with the Saturn, because they had to add in another coprocessor later on for 3D effects and 3D graphics for the Saturn. The Saturn is a powerful 2D machine, but they skimped on the 3D until the last minute because they realized, oh crap, Sony is going all out with 3D. And Nintendo 64 was definitely going all out with 3D, but that was much later after the Saturn and after the PlayStation had already launched. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a piece of history. And after all the stink that happened with the Super Nintendo PlayStation add-on, that it was, again, I could write and talk about that forever, and I'm going to eventually make a video about that. There was a lot of systems going on around that time. Everybody thinks that well, it's not new, but that prototype that they found a couple years ago of the Super Nintendo with the CD-ROM built into it, no, there was more systems than that, and there was a lot of things that Sony was doing that Nintendo didn't like, and there was a lot of things that Nintendo was doing that Sony didn't like. So I think Sony found their inroads with Square, and they were like, screw you, Nintendo. And I think Nintendo was like, well, CDs are going to fail, so screw you guys, you know. Booger Man on the back of that centerfold for Donkey Kong Country 2. This is the Superpower Supplies catalog for winter of 1995. This would have come around November of 95 and would have been around volume 78. And then here's Donkey Kong Country 2 on the December volume 79 issue of Nintendo Power Magazine. Wow, and look at that goofy stick right there. But that's the first look at the Nintendo 64, Nintendo Ultra 64 controller. Whoa. Man, oh man. And Earthworm Jim 2. See, all these great Super Nintendo games are coming out and too focused on the future. So, yeah. And then on the back of that centerfold is what is this, Waterworld stages, and this is the Super Nintendo Waterworld. That's what's funny. They were advertising the Virtual Boy one, but already the Virtual Boy was like, oh, let's act like this didn't happen. And there's Donkey Kong Country 2 card set in the back. So we are at the end of 1995, folks. Can you wait for 1996 and all the Nintendo 64 delays? I am not bitter about it. I love the 64. That was the first system that I had ever gotten that was a launch system, and I was excited about it. And that was the reason I got my first job. That was the reason I was saving up my money and managing money, and because I knew my mom wasn't going to buy it for me, so I already got you that other thing, you know, that kind of. So, oh man, And with that last middle finger, goodbye, guys. Sorry this video is so long. 1996 is next month.